And I'll ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and perhaps you could, in your thoughts, condolences for the family and friends and the fellow tow truck operators in the death of Todd Burgess. Thank you. Please be seated. There was a touching show of support by the tow truck operators and the truck convoy for Todd Burgess's funeral. And I would ask everyone to remember to slow down and drive to the road conditions. As well, remember when you see flashing lights to move over for emergency and roadside services to keep everyone safe. Thank you. I have regrets from Councillor McDougall for tonight's meeting. I'm asking for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements from Council. Councillor Brown.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the Candlelight Walk is upon us. It's this Friday. They start at Palmer Park and they go through downtown and back to the park. It's also the Christmas tree lighting. It starts at 6:30. I was talking to Tony Jansen about this, and among other things we talked about this. Better to be there around 6 or whatever if you're going, or just before 6 o'clock, because I was there last year, and many of us were, if not all of us, were there last year, and it gets packed pretty quick. So that's one. Carriage rides begin, by the way, on November the 30th, and I've been asked to announce this. It's that time of year again. Gingerbread is coming to the library. So we invite you to come into the library and see the astounding creativity of Scugog residents, and while you're at it, you may just catch the spirit of the season. Bakersville Gingerbread Village will be on display during regular library hours from December the 3rd until January the 4th.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And the smell of gingerbread as soon as you enter the library just makes your stomach growl. Really a gorgeous display. Any other announcements from Council? I have a couple on the issue of safety. Again, the Durham Regional Police Services announced their first week of the RIDE campaign. 6 charges were laid for impaired driving, and 10 registered a warn on the screening. I don't know what it takes to get people to realize you just can't drink and drive. The other thing that I would like to remind Council of is if you have any changes that you are anticipating for the budget or that you would like to put forth, please do so now. It's actually due a few days ago, but in fairness to our finance staff, please get those items into Diane so that she and her staff can work out just what that means to the budget and what it means to, and the other staff, what it means to our Works Department and all the different departments. So please get them in. Thank you very much. Councillor Watton.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind people of the waterfront workshops being held tomorrow evening. From between 4 to 5:30 or 6:30 to 8. They're looking for public input on how we will move forward with the waterfront. And also I'd like to remind everyone of the active transportation public open house from 6 till 8. I'm not sure where that is, at the library. I'll have to get back on that. I'm not exactly sure where it is. Oh, it's in the council chambers, of course. So that is on Thursday, the 21st of November. And also that Durham Transit is seeking public input on the 27th of November at Voss between 12 and 3 or 5 to 8. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And just with respect to the waterfront plan, I just want to make people very well aware that this is to get your ideas. There is no preconceived ideas. I heard yesterday at church that it was going to be loud and long, and I said, why? And well, we don't want any changes. Well, then if you don't want any changes, then tell us that, because this is an open book right now. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to mention that there's the first craft sale being held at the Blackstock Arena on Sunday, November 24th from 10 until 3. There's a whole bunch of different crafts and snack tables. Tables are still available for vendors if you contact farmgirlcreations@hotmail.ca.
Anything further?
And the
from-
pancake breakfast, sorry.
Anything further from council? Staff, any announcements from staff? Seeing none, then we will move on. Public meetings, the zoning bylaw amendment, and I have something I have to read here. This portion of the meeting has been set aside for a public meeting held under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Robert K. Clark of Clark Consulting Services on behalf of Jennifer Garrett Graham and Mark Graham for the property located at 2831 Shirley Road, Blackstock. The purpose of this public meeting is to obtain the views and comments of the public. No decision will be made at this public meeting. It is important that the public express their views either in person or in writing prior to decisions being made by the Council of the Township of Scugog or the Region of Durham. Everyone present has the opportunity to speak. Please be considerate of the acknowledged speaker by refraining from side conversations. While you may agree or disagree with the speaker, please refrain from audible responses and respect each speaker. To ensure that all those present who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, speakers should limit their comments to 5 minutes and keep comments as brief and to the point as possible. Prior to speaking, please clearly state and spell your name and provide your property address for records purposes. You are encouraged to provide your comments in writing so that staff can ensure that they are accurately recorded and appropriately considered. If you wish to file an appeal of Council's decision to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT for short, you must first speak to the matter at this public meeting or provide a written submission before a decision is made. If you don't, you may not be added as a party to a hearing by the LPAT unless the tribunal determines there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you would like to be notified of the decision on these matters, please provide written notice of your desire to receive notice. The notice for this public meeting was given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. I will now ask Nicola Alston to provide information regarding the applications and an overview of the staff information report included in this agenda. Ms. Alston, will please proceed for your presentation.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm losing my
You're all
voice.
choked
I
up.
apologize. The purpose of this report is to present preliminary information with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the statutory public meeting. A future staff report will include an analysis of any comments received tonight, together with any subsequent written comments, and make a recommendation on the zoning application. The required public notice was provided to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. It was published in the local newspapers and was posted on the township's website. A sign has also been placed on the property to notify the public of the application. On June 28, 2019, an application to amend zoning bylaw 1414 was received from Clark Consulting on behalf of Jennifer Garrett Graham and Mark Graham, the owners of 2831 Shirley Road. The application was deemed complete on July 5th, 2019. The applicants are the owners of approximately 60 hectares or 148 acres located at 2831 Regional Road 19 or Shirley Road. AJ Kinder Incorporated is the owner of the abutting lands that will be the benefiting lands at 2871 Shirley Road. A related application for consent was approved by the Region of Durham's Land Division Committee under the application LD 95/2019 on August 12, 2019. Approximately 59 hectares of an agricultural parcel was severed from a .89 hectare lot with an existing surplus farm dwelling at 2831 Shirley Road being retained. The severed parcel will be consolidated with the approximately 60.7 hectares or 150 acres of the benefiting lands or the abutting parcel owned by A.J. Kinder. Please be aware that the severance policy of the agricultural designation with the Townships of Scugog's official plan permits the severance of a resident's surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation, which residence was an existing use as of December 16th, 2004, provided the retained farm parcel is zoned to prohibit any future severances and the establishment of any residential dwellings. This policy is also consistent with the provincial policy statement, Greenbelt Plan, Oak Ridge's Moraine Conservation Plan, and the Region of Durham's official plan. A condition of approval for the land division application is to rezone the retained parcel from agricultural and agricultural holding zones to a rural residential exception zone. This is in order to recognize the decreased lot area and frontage of this parcel. The exception zone identifies the oversized detached accessory structure along with the structure's height. The severed parcel and the abutting parcel will be rezoned from agricultural holding, and environmental protections, both within and out of the Oak Ridge's moraine zones, to each of these zones being assigned a zone exception to prevent any further severances and the establishment of any new residential dwellings on these lands. A planning justification report and a Phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment were submitted in support of the application. Attachment 1 of the township's report shows the conditionally improved severance. There were no objections or concerns received from any external agencies, which includes the region's planning, works, and health departments, and also the Kawartha Conservation Authority. No objections or concerns were identified by the township's internal departments. Should staff recommend approval of this application, the necessary zoning bylaw amendment and all conditions of approval will be included in a future staff report for the consideration of council. Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Alston? Okay, thank you very much, Nicola. I hope you're feeling better. I'll now ask Hugh Stewart from Clark Consulting Services to present information regarding this application on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Stewart, please proceed. Just press the red button there to make sure we hear you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Hugh Stewart, Clark Consulting Services, and I think Nicola has presented well the proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council for Mr. Stewart? No, seeing none. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Please proceed to the microphone and state your name and municipal address for the record. I'll ask again, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this application? Final time, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, thank you for attending and providing your input into the statutory public information meeting. This concludes this portion of the meeting. Thank you very much. We'll move to page 13 of your agenda, staff report DEV 2019-031. The recommendation is that this report be entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Z04 2019, J. Garrett Graham and M. Graham and A.J. Kinder, Inc., 2831 Regional Road, 19 Shirley Road, Concession 3 East, Part Lot 4, South Part Lot 5, and Concession 3, Part Lot 5, Ward 4, information report be received, and that staff report back to council with a recommendation on this application at the earliest opportunity. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kiesebrink. Seconder? Councillor Watton. Questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Move on to presentation. Mr. Hack from Sierra Management. And this is the Community Improvement Plan for the Port Perry Employment Area. Mr. Hack, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. This is the presentation.
Is your microphone on? Red.
It is. Oh,
Okay.
thank you. This is the presentation for the finalization of the Community Improvement Plan. Some of these slides you've seen before, but I think given the distance between presentations, we'll go through it. And of course, we're available this evening for any questions that you will have. In terms of just very much the basics, the Community Improvement Plan that we're referring to is a document that justifies public investment in employment land uses. It is separate and apart from any other community improvement plan that you may see around, or in fact that the township is working on at the moment. And so it develops a series of protocols for financial incentives. The process, we are at the tail end of the process, meaning the plan has had its public meeting, its statutory public meeting, and then this evening this is for final consideration of the plan as written. The rationale for this plan is several-fold. Like many community improvement plans, it is designed to promote economic development, and community improvement plans are generally considered to be important tools that every municipality should use in order to focus the kind of development that it wishes to see, and also to direct where that development should happen. In this case, the title of the Community Improvement Plan is for employment uses, but it also, as you see from the document, it includes the goal of the municipality to include and incentivize hotel development as well. So it speaks to both those issues. But in terms of sort of the employment or the sort of manufacturing type uses, some of the objectives there are laid out on the page, including, importantly, the basic ability to be able to increase the proportion of the assessment and therefore the tax borne by sustainable, long-term, higher-paying jobs and businesses in town, and to reduce the burden on the residential tax base, much the same as any other community would seek to do. In terms of the way community improvement plans are put forward, they really are creatures of the statutory planning process. They have to fall in line with planning policy, and this plan is no different. So there are elements from the official plan of the township that have been drawn upon in developing this, and of course also the higher level plans as well. And importantly, any applications coming forward have to meet they have to be applications that have favor with the township as well. So in terms of the community improvement project areas, just by way of brief background, the Community Improvement Plan is a document that outlines the ways in which you will incentivize applications that come forward for development or facade improvement, or whatever it might be, depending on the CIP under consideration. But the most important part of any community improvement planning exercise, and the legislation requires it, is the designation of the Community Improvement Project Area, CIPA. And so the map there you see is the CIPA designated for employment uses. So that is bounded by the employment area for Port Perry. With that in place, the ability is then in place via the Municipal Act to be able to incentivize, via the Planning Act, to be able to incentivize properties through these incentive programs. In terms of the eligible uses, there was a lot of discussion about this at the consultation stage, but it is essentially as a discretionary process, and I should also state that the community improvement plan is not an entitlement. It is a discretionary tool that can be used to benefit really the public interest. It is designed to invest through subsidization of projects that come along where there is clearly a benefit to the community as a whole. Otherwise, why would you use public resources? So it's about community improvement and economic development. In terms of the employment uses, therefore, the ones that were seen to be the ones that we wish to focus on are there, and it sort of comes out of the zoning bylaw: manufacturing, businesses, medical, dental, professional, administrative, corporate head offices, engineering, research, development activities, and distribution. It excludes commercial uses because that really is a separate land use category. It would include some commercial uses that are ancillary to the primary use of the lands outlined here. The other aspect of that, and I'll just belabor the point just for an extra minute, is that we've left it fairly flexible because in our experience there's going to have to be an interpretation as you work through the plan in terms of the merit of particular applications as they come along. So these are guidelines in the plan. As it relates to the hotel development, the community improvement project area is drawn as the urban area, the extent of the urban area of Port Perry itself, and that aligns with the planning policies in place in the township and then also in the higher level planning documents that govern planning. In terms of the financial incentive programs, just to run through, there are very detailed protocols for how they're accessed, what the eligibility is, but in summary form, the three programs: the first is planning fees and building permit grant provisions, where 75% of planning fees can be granted back to the applicant to a maximum of $15,000 per property, whichever is less. And the funding source for that essentially is money that doesn't come into the municipality. It is written back as a check to the applicant at the time of making the application, or once the application is deemed to be acceptable, so at the back end of the process. The second is development charge grants. So just to be clear, these are not rebates, these are not waivers, they are grants, and that's very specific language of the Planning Act to enable that so that we don't confuse development charge legislation with planning legislation. In terms of its level, it is possible, depending on the merit of the application as written, to provide up to 100% of the development charges levied by the township back as a grant. So the adjudication of how much is going to be a factor of how good the application is, how much it meets the public interest. It does exclude those development charges that are at the regional level, or where relevant to some degree, the education development charge. But the plan and obviously the management and staff of the township have been very clear that this plan should be written, and is written, to try and take advantage of the Regional Revitalization Program, which is Durham Region's program in support of lower tier CIPs. In terms of the funding approval, this will be taken on an operational surplus basis. It may presumably take a small amount of time or a longer amount of time, depending on the nature of the application and how much funding is provided to that successful application. Third one is cash in lieu of Parkland grant program, and they're up to 100% of cash in lieu dedication fees, and that can be, depending on the application, that can be a substantial additional benefit. And just one observation is that Bill 108 of the province has put in place to make changes to the Planning Act, and I think a dozen other pieces of legislation that will have a bearing on the mechanics of some of this once it's in place, so you can expect some further reporting on that. The implementation, They will require, annual funding, and applications will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis and will be evaluated on their merit, and that's an important concept. And similar to that, while it's not intended to restrict program support, in fact, these plans are in place to help development. So the emphasis is to work with applicants to develop the right projects that do merit public support. Council always has to reserve the right to be able to terminate and change programs based on any range of considerations that it deems relevant over the life of the plan. A number of performance measures. Every year we have to ask ourselves, is the plan meeting the objectives? Do we have enough applications? Is it resulting in additional development underway? And so that is something that staff will be tasked to do. Nothing particularly overbearing in terms of gathering information, but a careful look to see how the plan is working for the township. And then in light of conversations that have happened about the merit of the urban boundary as the limit specifically for hotel development, there is a chart there which just shows where a prospective application is down by the golf course relative to the urban boundary. And to be helpful to the discussion on this, obviously there are a number of questions that I think can be asked and discussion had. In terms of how you do a community improvement plan, the plan has to, as I said, be hinged off of a community improvement project area. So you have to make a decision as to what that project area is. And so when you do that, it really is part and parcel of determining when and where is the best location and form of development that should occur to meet the test of public funding. So it's less about the merit of an application and more about the merit of public funding. And so the plan is written in that way. In terms of the discretionary funding approach, we could have, and some municipalities do, take the view that you recast the project area as the entire municipality. Many municipalities do that because it gives them full ability to review applications that come in from any location. The other alternative is to focus it based on where the planning policies say development should occur. And in this case, this is what has been done. But in all cases, every application has to be assessed on its merits. And so in doing that, the urban area boundary, or the location within the urban boundary, meets all of the planning objectives of the municipality. But we can take any questions on that as may be required. That is it, Madam Mayor, so I'll hand it back to you if there are any questions.
Thank you. Good timing. Any questions from council? Seeing none, did you have anything you wanted to add to Mr. Heritage? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your presentation this evening. Just a quick question in regards to the CIP area that you're talking about, and that, as you mentioned, being the most important area. In your final comments, you said that many municipalities engage the entire municipality as a CIP. What is the reasoning that we've gone ahead with the boundary that we have when there are areas that are zoned that would kind of include the development that we're looking at in the CIP?
The short answer to that is it cuts out work later on. In other words, you're making the decisions now as to where you should focus development. So there's a whole range of planning policies that would prioritize the urban area as the place where you should have, whether it's commercial development, infill development, as opposed to in the non-urban areas of the municipality. So that's the cleanest and the approach that sets up the plan without making undue expectations. The other approach is, and in some cases it's legitimate, but I'm not sure it is in this case where you have very strong planning policies, to just simply designate the entire municipality. The entire area that is within the official plan boundaries can be designated a community improvement project area, but then you have to sift through the applications that come in. So some areas just are not appropriate. You may want to take a prioritization approach. So you have different zones in different parts of the municipality. So the short answer is it's good and best practice to try and keep it as tight as you can if that's the intent of what you wish to do. And based on the planning policies, it seems to be the case.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up to that, are there any guidelines that are in place to help identify the discretionary part of the CIP, as far as whether it's, you mentioned the fact that it's a maximum 100%, whether it's 50%, 100%, or it even meets the criteria at all?
It's entirely up to the municipality. I mean, you have to make sure that the municipality is acting per the statutory guidelines. So if you make material changes to the plan, you suddenly enrich the plan considerably, then you have a duty to go back to the public to say, is this still what we want to do with our tax money? But above and beyond that, it is a function of understanding the balance between economic development, over the longer term, seizing the opportunity. If a development comes along and it looks like it's going to happen, you see some municipalities recognize that that's important. And it's also wanted to make sure that you can be fiscally responsible. So a lot of our work involves doing these plans, but then running some numbers behind with the treasurer, frankly, to be able to determine what is the appropriate scale of development. So it is discretionary. But if you look around the province, there are some general norms, and it partly comes from the consulting community, but it is endorsed by municipalities. So things like, $15,000 maximum on the planning fees and building permits. You might see it 20,000, you might see it 10,000. On the DCs, you might see language like 100%. Some municipalities might have 50%. It really depends on the particular circumstances of the municipality.
Thank you.
Anything further from council? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Could I have a motion, please, that the presentation by John Hack, Sierra Management, regarding recommended community improvement plan for the Port Perry employment area be received? Councillor Brown, Councillor Watton. All those in favor? Thank you. Now, with council's indulgence, I'll ask if we can bring forward Dory McDonald, who wants to make a presentation on the proposed Port Perry Comfort Inn Community Improvement Plan and Site Plan Submission. Please come forward, Ms. McDonald. And who do you have with you today?
This is my son, Bobby McDonald.
Hi, Bobby.
Hi.
What a nice name.
Yeah.
I like the IE better than the Y. I can't win them all.
Please go ahead.
Before I start, I'd like to just hand out a couple pages of the presentation just that I'm speaking to, so we don't have to go through the whole CIP. Would that be all right?
Okay.
They're just individual sheets of the document, so we don't have to flip.
So you've got some for everybody?
Yes, I got
If
them
you
for
would give them
everybody.
to the recording secretary, then she will pass them along. Thank you. Make sure your microphone is on. Red dot, it'll light up there.
It's on. Okay.
The delegation starts on page 4. Okay, please go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, and staff. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak this evening. And I apologize, I feel like I am at the tail end of the community improvement plan, but but for me, this was important to speak to you. My name is Dory McDonald, for those that do not know me, and I'm here on behalf of my husband Graham and our investors, Doug and Ann Lunau, to speak to you about our proposed hotel development as it relates to the community improvement plan that is before us this evening. I did not want to come to council without our application in. So on Friday we did do what I thought was a 100% complete application, but we're missing 3 documents which will be in this week. And then hopefully we'll certainly be ready to proceed. Our hotel is a 72-room Comfort Inn, and it's located on 7A at the north end of the Sunnybray Golf Course. This site is zoned recreational and allows for a hotel. We would like to break ground in early spring of 2020, and this is approximately a 9-month build, 9 months to a year. So as I read the CIP, we do align to the town CIP objective. This hotel is aligned to the town CIP objectives, strategic direction number 3, economic development and tourism, create, grow, and attract employment opportunities. I believe this hotel will certainly bring tourism dollars to our town, as we all know. The hotel will create over 30 full and part-time jobs, and it will certainly generate increased revenue for businesses, restaurants, stores already existing in our town, not to mention the ones that may come as a result of a hotel. It will create growth. Anyone that lives in Port Perry or works in Port Perry certainly knows that we do need a hotel. And I believe that that is why you have a section for community improvement plan for a hotel in this document. So I did not want to come to council specifically. I did meet with the planning department prior to this evening, and I asked if we could get the CIP on the golf course lands. The specific CIP we want is the Development Charge Relief Program. And as a result of that discussion, we were turned down for 2 reasons, or we didn't meet the criteria. I don't want to say we were turned down, we didn't meet the criteria. The number 1 reason was that the CIP, the criteria for the CIP designation includes improvement, repair, and replacement of existing buildings. And our site is a vacant site, so that means a new build. In the handouts I have given you tonight, on page 29 of the Hotel Investment CIP boundary map is a blue line around the entire urban area for a hotel. There's a lot of vacant properties in that area. Chances are, if you're going to build a hotel, you need a 2-acre site and you're going to build a new build. I don't really know if we have anything in the town that we could renovate into a 72 or 100-room hotel. So any developer is going to come along, they need an accessible site, and it will be a new build. So to improve, repair, and replace an existing building probably doesn't really exist. When we had taken an interest in the Walmart lands for this hotel, and that was my second run at a hotel, was on the Walmart lands. That was a 2-acre parcel beside the LCBO. And we were eligible for the CIP, and that's because it was inside the urban boundary, or because it was in that area. So, but that was a new build. We weren't renovating anything. So that's why I believe now that we're outside, it's the same animal. It's the same build. So that was the reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the community improvement plan area, which coincides with our current urban boundary. So the area for our CIP for a hotel is the same as the urban boundary. That was the second reason why we didn't qualify. We are actually 450 meters exactly to the west of that boundary. We're still in the town of Port Perry. We happen to be zoned recreation and allowed for a hotel. And development charges are for the use of all of our major municipal services. With respect to this site, we have private servicing for water, we have private sewer for septic system, we have our own fire tanks and pumps. It's on it's on a provincial highway, and obviously we have garbage removal. So I don't really believe we're using those major resources of the town. I believe that we're adding more value to the town than taking away. And that's what development charges were originally for. So I just, in conclusion, not in my conclusion, I guess council can change our CIP area. And from what I understood just from listening to the gentleman from Sierra, it is a discretionary tool for the benefit of our community. And I really, really believe, and I know so do you, that this hotel is a benefit to our community. And it does happen to make sense as a hotel development site at that location. So I guess that when I spoke with the minister at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, I went down and had a meeting. They said a CIP is genuinely a tool for municipalities to increase economic growth, or to be able to, not bonus, but they can't give us 5 years of free taxes, but they can bonus and say, listen, we really want you, what can we do to help? And that's what we are asking. Section 28 of the Planning Act clearly gives municipalities the ability to say, we can do this for you if you can bring your business to our town. So in conclusion, the CIP is right in front of us. It's right, or it's the CIP, my request is that blue line either be extended over to the Sunnybray lands or to our site, or do a new boundary around that, around where the hotel is. And it would be very, very helpful to this project, and it does make a huge difference to the project. So I'm asking our councillor in our town to support us in granting us the CIP, whatever way is possible, for the Development Charge Relief Program. And I'm happy to answer any questions about where we're at.
Bobby, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, I think she covered it. I'm good at moving PowerPoints though.
I see.
I might not, so.
Well, there's no question that a hotel would bring added value to Scugog Township, and the 30 part-time or the 30 jobs that you would bring to Scugog is without question a value for the economic development, the tourism of this town. And that's why our staff and council has worked very, very hard with you to make this a reality. So with that, I'll ask, are there any questions from council? Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mrs. McDonald, for your presentation. Just a question. Your last part of your presentation, you said it would make a huge difference to the project if you did or did not have this boundary extended. If council was to deny the extension of the boundary, what would that impact to the project look like?
I can't make that decision yet. The first part of this whole project was to see whether it was even feasible on these lands. So we have spent $300,000 to date doing studies to make sure there's water, to make sure we could have a septic system, to make sure this would even work. That's where we're at right now. Now it's the financial part of this whole of this development. I'll tell you right now, it is a $9.7 million build. It's a tough one. And the reason that there hasn't been people knocking down the doors to do a hotel is because it's a very expensive project. As a developer and as representing our investors, it's my job to watch every penny to make this thing work, because there's a risk at everything you do, and it's a big project. Personally, for me, this is a big project, and it is a big risk. So that's why I'm here to ask that whatever can be done, it's important for this project to be really feasible. So right now, as I said, we've done our submission. It's not a slam dunk yet. Now we have to put the numbers together to make sure that we can proceed. I believe we can, or we wouldn't have gone down this road. But Councillor Guido, it is really important that I watch every penny on this particular project.
Further?
Thank you.
No? Any other questions from council? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, both of you. That's kind of an offside question, but I hope you don't mind. There's a pool that's part of this hotel that's planned, is that right?
Yes.
Is that the kind of thing that would be open to the public at all, or is it just for residents, or not residents, but people who are staying there?
What we'll do is, we have spoken about that actually. Certainly the town has talked, we've had so many meetings about the hotel. And if we could, it has to fit with the guests of the hotel. So there might be 2 days or 2 half days where we say the seniors come. So until we see what the demand is, and I have to work with Choice Hotels on that, they'll know better than anyone when the busy times are and when there is availability. So will we work towards that? I did tell the town that we would if it is feasible and it works for both sides.
Okay.
So I'd like to say, you know what, I believe that in this town, I've shown whatever I can do, I will do. And I think that goes for the hotel as well. It doesn't matter, we're not selling the hotel, we have to operate the hotel, as we have the golf course. So when you're invested in a town, you're not just running the hotel and leaving town. We're here. So wherever I can help or wherever we can participate in any activities of the town, we're going to, for sure, anyway.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we have discussed a pool with you, and perhaps looking at experiences of other hotels of this size and in this type of area, you could learn from that experience about when it would be feasible to have sort of a community contractor with the township to in cooperation and for community use. So
that's right, Bobby. And you know what? As you know, if there's something that we can do together, when you sit down and work it out, it works out. And I firmly believe that. And I think, and you know, when the day that it doesn't work out, we can say, okay, now it's not working out. And then we're getting our own big pool. So
I would presume that you had a business plan when you entered into this. Is it going along as you expected?
Yes,
you know, I think probably, I know you hit water earlier than expected, so that was kind of a bonus because that is an unknown.
So yeah, that was the big unknown, was is there going to even be enough water for this site and fire water? And at 80 feet we hit water, and certainly there is enough for fire water as well. And that was the bit you don't know until you drill.
That's right.
So, and that's why the submission is done. And the MTO is still the only, you know, we're working with them and they've been great so far. So I think we'll be all right.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion that the delegation by Doris McDonald proposed Port Perry Comfort Inn regarding the community improvement plan and site plan submission be received. Councillor Watton, Councillor Ross. All those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. And now we'll bring forward the report with your indulgence. And that is on, what page is that on? Page 24. Mr. Heritage, thank you for your delegation. And
I go now?
Yeah, thank you very much.
No more questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, we're bringing the report forward. Just to get it on the floor, we had a change, didn't we? Was that the one? No, it's the next one that we had a change on. That's right. Yeah, sorry, okay. So we can get the recommendation on the floor, a motion on the floor that the report entitled Recommended Community Improvement Plan for the Port Perry Employment Area be received, that the recommended community improvement plan for the Port Perry employment area be endorsed, and that a bylaw to adopt the community improvement plan for the Port Perry employment area be forwarded to council for review and consideration as soon as possible. And if there is an amendment, I would welcome it. So mover is Councillor Watton. Seconder, Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I have an amendment once questions have been answered.
Okay. After the questions, do you say? Okay. Questions on the report? No question. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Director Heritage. Sorry, just let me find it here. Director Heritage, if I could get your comments, just I asked earlier in regards to why the CIP area was where it was designated, why it wasn't smaller, why it's not bigger, and then with information given tonight, why it doesn't include the entire township. Could you speak to that question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The overall intent of a community improvement plan is to implement the vision, the goals and objectives and policies of the official plan. Now, the main focus of the township's official plan for major commercial developments, such as a hotel, is gearing it towards the Port Perry urban area. That is why those lands have been identified as a community improvement project area to promote the development of a hotel within that area. And as Mr. Hackett indicated, that staff is proposing 3 programs to provide those incentives to encourage a hotel within the urban boundary.
Just follow up with that, Madam Mayor, through you. Is it important that or maybe you could explain why it's important that the hotel be in the employment lands as opposed to somewhere else?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it's not necessarily within the employment lands, but in the Port Perry urban boundary. As you know, the majority of the Township of Scugog is within the Greenbelt plan and is designated in the Greenbelt. And the primary designation within the Greenbelt is agricultural. On these lands, the Township of Scugog official plan designates these lands agricultural. The regional official plan designates it as prime agricultural, and the PPS reflects that. And under that designation, hotels are not a permitted use. However, under bylaw 1414, these lands are zoned RE, recreational, which permits a hotel in conjunction with a recreational use. And the existing recreational use on these lands is a golf course. So the zoning permits the proposed use, but the official plans do not.
Okay, thank you. If I know we're pushed with Greenbelt pushing directly up against our urban boundary without a kind of a wash in between them. Would it be advantageous for us to have then take advantage of any areas around there that are zoned for industrial builds, like the hotel or resort area, even because they're outside? Would that not be an ideal spot for it to be, because it's not taking up land in the employment area?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. As part of the regional official plan review, the municipal comprehensive review, suggestions are being made that perhaps some additional lands beyond the urban boundary should have been designated as white belt. There are a number of municipalities in the region of Durham that have a white belt between their urban boundary and the green belt. However, unfortunately, in this situation, the township does not have any white belt lands to accommodate the potential for future development. So the township is limited to any future development within the existing urban boundary, within the Port Perry urban boundary or the Hamlet urban boundaries. So we're looking specifically at any greenfield lands within the urban boundary or through intensification to accommodate any future growth.
Any other questions? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another question for you, Director Heritage. Can you help me to understand the Regions Revitalization Program? And on page 27 of our agenda, it speaks to the Regions Revitalization Program as another source of funding for applicants, but then it goes on further to say that the municipality is the one that has to apply for this through the region, including a business case for development and implementation. So what the applicant does not do this, the municipality determines whether it has a feasible case for this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the applicant would provide the supporting documentation to the local municipality to put the case forward that regional revitalization funds would be appropriate. That request comes directly from the area municipality.
Okay, and is there a cap that a certain municipality is only able to be approved a certain number through the region?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, the cap is based on the amount of available funding from the local area municipality. The region will not exceed that amount that is being provided by the local area municipality.
And do they do the same, through you, Madam Mayor, do they do the same process of first come, first serve? Or how do they allocate the funding?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it's all based on the regional budget and how much money they've allocated on an annual basis.
So if the Township of Scugog has an application that they're going to submit in November, and the year's almost up and the region's already used their allocated funding, does that mean that we may not successfully receive assistance?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it will be done through the following year.
Okay, so it
Considering
can
the
transfer.
following
Okay.
year, yes.
All right, perfect. That's my next question in regards to our own municipal CIP for funding. Once the funds from the operating surplus have been depleted, where does the funding come from?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The Development Charges Act does not require the funds to be paid back in a certain period of time. Those funds can be paid back in the Development Charge Reserve over an extended period of time. Municipalities have different thresholds that they use to pay back funds. In this case, if there is a fairly small operating surplus, the council may choose not to allocate funds to the Development Charges Reserve to pay back any funds in a particular year. If there's a good year where we've got a substantial surplus or a little more than normal, we can allocate more funds to the DC Reserve. So there's no specific requirement in terms of the amount that has to be allocated in a specific time period.
Okay, thank you. Further, if I may. So did the municipality will set the duration of the payback for the DC? And is there a set limit? Is 25 years or 10 years? How do we determine what that would be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it's entirely up to the council to determine whether it's 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years.
Okay, and as far as when we are receiving an application, will there be a process that the Township of Scugog will adopt, or a policy on how we would evaluate it and what the recommendation from staff to council would be it the full 100% of it or 73? How would that be valued?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, a process will be set up. There will be an internal review committee that will review an application and provide a recommendation to council. All applications come through council for review and approval.
And the policy will come to council for approval as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further? Further, Councillor Quinn? Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Watton, you had an amendment?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. I would like to just amend that the second part of the recommendation, which currently reads that the recommended community improvement plan for the Port Perry employment area be endorsed. I would like that to read that the recommended community improvement plan for the Port Perry employment area also include the property known as 1430 Highway 7A to enable the landowner to apply for the available incentive programs for a hotel development be endorsed.
Seconder for the amendment, Councillor Kiesebrink. Questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Kiesebrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Basically, we have two anomalies. As our staff have pointed out, the zoning on this property already permits a hotel together with a golf course. However, the official plan shows the property as prime agricultural and not in the urban downtown. So that's one anomaly. The second one the staff have pointed out is that our official plan criteria references renovations, doesn't specifically reference new build. However, in page 55, section 28.1 of the Planning Act, it does include both development or redevelopment, construction or reconstruction, along with rehabilitation and improvements. Also, section 28 of the Planning Act does give a lower tier municipality the ability to designate by bylaw a specific property, an area, or an entire community, as Sierra has just mentioned to us earlier. Given those factors and the fact that we have these two anomalies, I think today I would support Regional Councillor Watton's motion, because I think that it gives this council the opportunity to do something to support what has been many years in coming, a very long time initiative to bring a hotel to our community, and it is in fact part of our long-standing strategic initiative, has been to attract a hotel to the township. And given that the directive of the Planning Act is that it be a key action for community improvement, I don't think that anyone would disagree that a hotel and any other hotel application that would come forward under our CIP would be of great community improvement, considering we rely so greatly on and need a hotel so greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the amendment? On the amendment? Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question perhaps to Director Heritage. Once the CIP area is established with, today or down the road, is there opportunity for further amendments similar to what Councillor Watton's suggesting tonight once the area is actually established?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, there are opportunities for further amendments to the CIP.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So going forward, if we have another situation similar to what we have tonight, not a hotel, something else come up and it's outside of the CIP area, will they be able to address council and ask for similar discounts, I guess, to the CIP, from the CIP for that area?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, that there is that opportunity for a request to council to amend the CIP boundary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions or comments to the amendment? All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. To the main motion as amended, questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to page 86, and Mr. Jamie Robinson from MHBC Planning is going to talk to us about the Port Perry employment area, the secondary plan review. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Jamie.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. My name again is Jamie Robinson, and I'm here on behalf of MHBC Planning and the municipality, and we have been in the process of preparing a secondary plan for this same area where the CIP has been considered, minus the amended area that you just considered. What I'd like to do tonight is, the purpose of this meeting is to give you an update on the status of the process, give you a brief overview of the some of the proposed changes to the secondary plan area, and then a summary of next steps. What this isn't, and the real purpose is to request council provide direction to staff to schedule an open house meeting, and then also a public meeting. That's really what we're here to ask you for tonight, but to provide you with some information in order to make that recommendation. Purpose of that open house meeting would be to get some feedback from the public and members of council if they decide to attend on the draft policies and on the proposed amendments to the plan, the maps specifically. Then if necessary, we would make some modifications and then come back with the actual statutory public meeting at that time. So there is a process left to get to the finish line on this one. So in terms of why are we doing this secondary plan, what's the purpose? We take our direction from two places. First, the strategic plan, and then secondly, the official plan. So these are the two strategic objectives from the official plan, or from the strategic plan, that are applicable. So your strategic plan does identify a recommendation to prepare a servicing and road network options for the employment area, and that's partially what we're going to provide to you tonight. And then secondly, from an economic development perspective, to finalize that secondary plan. The secondary plan is in existence. There's some policies in your plan that deal with the employment area, but these are to provide some refinements and some more details to hopefully facilitate some development in that area moving forward, and mainly the servicing aspect of that secondary plan. So this slide identifies the tasks. These are the things that we've undertaken as part of the exercise. So looking at the road network, looking at the permitted uses, preparing a draft official plan amendment, and then going forward, possibly preparing a zoning bylaw amendment. We're not sure if that's going to be necessary or not, but that's something that we'll consider as we go through the process. What if there is a zoning bylaw amendment needed, what that would do is identify potentially some additional permitted uses or modifications to the permitted uses, possibly some changes to some of the performance standards, which mean side yard setbacks or parking requirements or those sorts of things. But the zoning aspect of it has not been considered at this time. So in undertaking this exercise, I wanted to make you aware that we have reviewed all the applicable policy documents. So the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Greenbelt plan, as well as the regional official plan and the township's official plan. Just some of the key things and key considerations that have been identified through this process. There is a provincially significant wetland in this employment area, and that was one of the a significant amount of work was undertaken both with the MNRF and the KRCA due to the stormwater management concept. It stands to reason that water runs downhill, so the PSW is basically in the lowest spot of the of this secondary plan, and from an engineering perspective, it makes sense to have our stormwater management facilities in those areas. So, and the municipality has done a significant amount of work already on locating those stormwater management facilities. So we have come to some agreement with the MNR and the KRCA about the location of those stormwater management facilities in the secondary plan area. And effectively, they'd be in that area that's identified in red along the north on Reach Street. That's in the approximate area of the stormwater management facilities. Just from an infrastructure concept perspective, there's a few things that I want to draw your attention to on this map. And again, that's one of the key objectives of this process, is to look at the infrastructure and make an argument for full sewage and water system in this area. I will mention that the region has identified, I believe it was last Thursday on the 15th, they produced a report where they have identified this employment area as one of the top 10 employment areas in the region in which to move forward for, so it is on their radar as well. That black star on Reach Street, that's the area where a potential sewage pumping station would be located. So what would happen is sewage would flow to that area by gravity, and then we'd be pumped to the sewage treatment facility for the town. So that's that black star on Reach Street. And then the blue cross in the sort of central portion of the employment area, that would be the area where a proposed water tower would be located. So those are sort of the two key pieces of infrastructure. You'll also see here that we've identified a conceptual road network, and the next few slides provide a few details about that. What it's intended to do is provide some connections from Taylor Boulevard that don't currently exist. It's a dead end, so it would not be a dead end anymore, which would facilitate more flow through. We also proposed a more grid system of road pattern within this area. And part of the objective is we don't want to establish specific lot sizes for future employment uses. We'd like this area to be such that if someone needs a 2-acre parcel, we have an ability to provide a 2-acre parcel. If they need a 10-acre parcel, we have the ability to market a 10-acre parcel to them in this employment area. So that's sort of the thinking behind the grid pattern of roads, that it provides good traffic flow, but then also provides that flexibility with respect to lot sizes as well. So just zooming in on Reach Street, the road network, we've tried to make the separation between the existing roads and potential future roads consistent across Reach Street, so that more or less a similar distance between those future intersections. And I guess what it did result in was from the current secondary plan, that second proposed intersection from the right, we have shifted it to the right from what the current plan shows to provide a more even distribution. As I mentioned previously, on the end of Taylor Boulevard, we're proposing that one of the roads would intersect with the end of Taylor Boulevard to provide a more flow through from that existing cul-de-sac. Provides easier operation from a public works perspective, but then also turning movements within the secondary plan for vehicles. In this southeastern portion of the site, we've shifted the road away from the open space or away from the hazard land, and effectively that area abutting that is the prestige industrial area. So that's the red that we see on the map. So the less, I'll say, noxious uses would be located adjacent to that natural feature, and generally around the exterior, the perimeter of the secondary plan area. So what you can see on this figure is again, the red is around the exterior. That's the more prestige employment designation, with the general employment designation being interior to the employment lands. And then what we wanted to earmark here is that the proposed plan provides some modifications to a few different schedules. It provides modifications to A1, which is the land use schedule, provides modification to C1, which is the transportation schedule. That's the effect of having the additional roads identified. And then Schedule I, which is the secondary plan schedule associated with the OP. I just wanted to draw your attention as well as we provide some modifications to the hatching. What the hatching identifies is the floodplain overlay and the hazard lands, and that's specifically in the area of on the northern portion of the secondary plan near where the stormwater management facility is. So there's been some modifications to that to reflect the floodplain and the PSW as provided by the KRCA. I think I've been over this already, but we've got the general grid system of roads, and as you can see, the exterior of the secondary plan is effectively the prestige industrial. I'll just draw your attention on the right side of the figure, on the east side of the figure. You can see that there's a section of prestige industrial that's on the right or to the east of the natural heritage feature that's not connected to the rest of the plan. We haven't proposed a road network in that area. It only consists of 2 properties. We would expect that that would be a developer-driven or landowner-driven area, and that a road pattern would be identified by those property owners should they proceed. The reason for identifying a road pattern in the rest of the secondary plan area is you've got a number of landowners in that area, and it makes sense to comprehensively plan how the road network would function between all those property owners. So just in terms of some of the key modifications, I'm not going to go through them all, but we propose, and there's a table to make it easy. There's a table at the back of the staff report if you want to have a look after the meeting, or if you haven't looked already, that provides a track changes summary of the policies that exist in the plan currently versus what are proposed to be changed. That's the table at the back of the staff report. And these next few slides highlight those proposed modifications. So again, sewer and water is important. We've added some additional permitted uses for institutional uses and commercial uses. The current plan is very focused on the employment, the industrial aspect of this, and did not specifically allow for institutional uses where there might be the odd institutional use that might be appropriate in this area. We've provided some modified policies related to the design of open storage and the site design of these properties. As I drew your attention to that eastern area of Prestige Industrial, there's residential abutting that area on both sides. So we've added some additional policies requiring buffering from adjacent residential uses. So if you're on one of those exterior areas that are adjacent to residential uses, there are additional policy tests that would apply that you'd have to meet for your permitted uses in those areas. And then we've added some additional policies related to where gas stations and service centers might be able to be located. Ideally, we've identified that these appropriate locations would be at the intersection of an arterial or a collector road. So the main roads, essentially on Reach, on the 6th line, and the intersection of one of the major arterials within the secondary plan area. So as indicated, the next step would be to proceed to an open house meeting. We haven't scheduled that yet. We're hoping that tonight council will give us direction to proceed and schedule that likely in the first quarter of the new year. And we would review any comments received from that. We would review any future public and agency comments. What we would do is once that open house occurs, we'd likely circulate a draft OPA to the region as well, and agencies for comment. And then we would proceed following that to a statutory public meeting. That would be the process. If there's no significant modifications to the plan after the open house meeting, we might proceed directly to a public meeting. If there are some significant modifications, we'd likely come back to council to provide an information report to council about those modifications before getting direction to proceed to the public meeting. So that would likely be the process moving forward to keep council aware of what's happening. So with that, that completes my presentation. And when we do have an open house, I would look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible to make sure we can educate you as best on the process. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Are there questions from Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just a question in regards to the the CIP coming ahead of the secondary plan. There's a brief explanation in here, but I'm hoping you can go further into detail on that. Just what caught my eye was that in the secondary plan, there's a point, it's point G when you get to the appendix at the back, that says, this is just an example, but the maximum height shall be 3 stories or 11 meters, whichever is less. But we have a proposed hotel, which could have gone on the CIP lands, which was looking for 4 stories. So we'd have a contradiction of the CIP would allow this hotel to go there, but the secondary plan would not allow it to go there. Why are we proceeding with CIP ahead of this secondary plan?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The reason for proceeding with the secondary plan is there's some existing businesses in the secondary plan already that are looking to expand and potentially benefit from the CIP. So that's really the reason why the CIP was put first before the secondary plan. But it's interesting you raised that point about the maximum height. That's one of the policies we're proposing to modify, that the height really belongs in the zoning bylaw as opposed to the policy document, is that the official plan or secondary plan, in our view, should really indicate that there should be maximum heights established, but leave it to the zoning bylaw to tell us what those should be, so that we don't have to do an official plan amendment if someone wants to build a higher building than what the town considers is appropriate based on the zoning bylaw. But really it's because there's some existing businesses that would like to take advantage of the CIP.
Okay, understandable. Through you, Madam Mayor, just some follow-up. If another example pops up later on, how would it be dealt with if there's a conflict between the CIP and the secondary plan?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It really depends on the nature of the conflict. It could mean that if it's the instance that you're identifying and you're within that secondary plan area and you want to build a building that's higher than what's permitted, you might be into an official plan amendment if you don't meet the policy of the day, because it's the policy that's in effect that applies. This hotel is not within the secondary plan area, so those policies don't apply about height maximums.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question in regards to the floodplain overlay. Will we be able to develop within a floodplain as identified by the KRCA?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in terms of the limits, you'll notice that the floodplain is an overlay. There's some permissions for development, provided minimum opening elevations are met, or the specific type of development that occurs. For example, you may be permitted some storage type uses in a floodplain, depending on the elevation that exists at the time. Give you another example, sometimes parking areas are permitted within floodplains, depending on the elevation. So it's really site specific and property specific.
Okay.
And, well, use specific as well.
So within the secondary plan, it'll be zoned accordingly within the secondary plan based on floodplains or otherwise. Is that correct?
You, Madam Mayor. So there's two separate documents. There's the secondary plan document that which is part of the official plan that establishes the policy basis. And then there's the zoning bylaw that establishes the specific zones and permitted uses. So the zoning bylaw would implement those floodplain policies that are in the plans. And what I mean by that is the zoning bylaw would establish minimum opening elevations potentially if you're in that area. The zoning bylaw would establish uses that are allowed as of right within that area versus uses that might be prohibited. So that's the interplay between the bylaw versus the policy document.
Okay, great. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Jamie. I just have a couple of questions. Is there the possibility of having a north-south road between Reach and Line 6 then, like a direct north-south road? Because I don't believe there is one right now. So I'm just thinking of people who are on Reach trying to get across to go to the Walmart or something, and they're looking for a quick way to do it. Is there something like that, and is that being taken into consideration at all? And I don't know that it's a good idea, but it's worth asking, I think.
Certainly. So if I'll just direct you to the screen here.
Yeah.
And so there's proposed intersections right now in this draft document, which again has not gone to the public yet, but there's the intersection that's here that's existing. There's an intersection proposed here and an intersection proposed there. And they would all link up, and there's two proposed intersections with the 6th line here. So in any number of ways could you get there. So it's essentially straight down and through, but yes, there would be connections through between the two.
I just think there'll be a lot of traffic there subsequent, if I may. On page 108 of our agenda, it says major retail uses shall not be permitted in employment areas except where currently designated as a permitted use as of June 3rd, 2009. I just want to know, have we revisited that in the last 10 years? Has that been looked at all, or are we still contemporary 10 years on?
So through you, Madam Chair, in terms of major retail uses are specifically prohibited in employment areas in the regional official plan. And then subsequently, our official plan follows suit and does not permit major retail uses in the employment areas. The theory behind that is that these are areas that that are intended to be preserved for, I'll call them higher order employment uses, so your more industrial type uses as opposed to those major retail uses. The municipality does have lands that are designated where major retail uses are permitted. And that's effectively the smart centers lands. If the municipality was ever looking at designating additional lands for major retail uses, that would likely occur through a comprehensive review of, is there a demand and is there a need for those additional major retail uses, or lands, sorry.
Okay, and just one more, if I may. And you're never, as a reporter, you're never supposed to say last question. So I just broke my own rule. Page 114, minimal visitor parking may be located within a front, I believe that's or exterior side yard. I just want to know what you consider minimal.
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure exactly what minimal means. That's the reason for the use of the word minimal is the idea is that to try to have buildings focused at the street as much as possible. The front and the exterior side yards are the 2 yards of a property that butt a street, either the front street plus a side street. So to try to limit the amount of parking in there, but then leave it up to the zoning bylaw to decide if there's a specific number or area of parking that's provided. So minimal is intended to be a fairly generalized term in this. So it's something we can look at through the process, but it's kind of used purposefully in this instance. There may be examples of where you might want to provide some handicapped parking in the front yard or 5 or 6 spaces, for example, in the front yard, but have your major parking areas to the rear and away. It's more of a design thing than anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything further? Councillor Kieserbrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Further to Councillor Ross's question with respect to G on page 108 in our report, it mentions the maximum height shall be 3 stories or 11 meters, and that was our previous plan. I'm seeing that the recommendation of a change would be that the zoning bylaw would establish a maximum building height that ensures compatibility between building heights in and adjacent to employment areas. So that's a change. The previous height restrictions, did that have to do with our firefighting equipment and the height that we could reach with that equipment?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure. That's a reasonable explanation, but I wasn't here as part of that, so I can't specifically say why that maximum was there, but it's likely a factor of that plus what you'd anticipate to see in an employment area in terms of height maximums. But I think so.
So further through you, Madam Mayor, so the changes that you're recommending give a little bit more fluidity, but as you've identified earlier to Councillor Ross, the idea being that the individual zoning of the properties would speak to the height more specifically than what would be identified in the secondary plan report. Is that what the thought is?
Through Madam Chair, yes, it would be the zoning bylaw that would limit the height. Idea being that if the number is specifically included in the official plan, like a specific height maximum, if someone were to exceed it by even the smallest amount, they would potentially require an official plan amendment. So we'd prefer to deal with those height considerations as part of the zoning bylaws. It's really the same public process that's involved. So.
Anything further? That's great. Could I have a motion, please, that the presentation by Jamie Robinson, MHBC Planning regarding Port Perry Employment Area Secondary Plan Review be received? Councillor Ross, Councillor Guido. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we'll move to the report now. There has been, it's been passed around just some last minute information that we received, and we may as well make these additions now and then it's all complete. So can we get the motion on the floor, please? I shall read it. The report DEV 2019-033 dated November 18th, 2019, entitled Port Perry Employment Area Secondary Plan Review be received, and that a maximum of $12,000 inclusive of taxes be awarded to MHBC to complete the remainder of the secondary plan review work, and that staff be authorized to schedule a public open house and the required statutory public meeting related to the proposed official plan amendments for the Port Perry Employment Area Secondary Plan Review. I'm sorry, that has been changed to 10,806. Right? Okay. Everybody got that straight? I beg your pardon? Sorry. Councillor Valentin, would you like to?
Director.
Did I say councillor?
Yeah.
It's only 8 o'clock. What's the matter with me? Director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just an addition of an additional recommendation to award the contract to MHBC in the amount of $12,000 inclusive of taxes, and that an additional amount of $10,806 be allocated from the MP reserve.
Okay. Did everybody get that? Councillor Ross, you're looking puzzled.
No, I have the sheet in front of me, so I see it spelled out. I just have questions in regard to if it's two separate funds, or it's one is the fund being given and one is the direction.
Director?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. One is awarding the work to MHBC. There's no funding associated with that. So the second one is to award the funding from the MP reserve, which is the same reserve that the original award. So this is in addition to the award that it's currently there.
Okay.
This would be 10,806, not 22,000.
Correct.
Okay. So do I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Watton, Councillor Brown. Questions or comments on the motion or the report? There was already questions asked of the report, so there might be just a few more. Councillor Watton?
No, I just reread the last portion to make sure about the public open house.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. Do we know once this is approved, if it is approved, when the open house would be scheduled? Is it before the holidays, after the holidays?
First quarter, I think.
We'd be looking at sometime in the first quarter,
Okay.
once the dust is settled on the holidays.
Thank you.
Anything further? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll move to the last report. That's all we have to deal with now.
Good job.
And that is on page 119. Recommendation is that this report film update for the old mill be received and that council direct funds of $25,000 received for use of the old mill be placed in the facilities reserve for future use. Can I have a mover, please, to get it on the floor? Councillor Watton, Councillor Ross. Questions or comments? Director Valentin.
Sorry, just a clarification on the recommendation. It's a facility and building reserve. We're building a facility reserve.
The facility and building reserve. Okay. Friendly amendment. Okay, any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? It's a good news story. Thank you very much. And now, there's no correspondence. Any new business? Seeing none, no closed session. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Guido, Councillor Kiesebrink. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.